Hi, and welcome to Don's Smelting tutorial. Today we'll be covering how to go from the basics to the advanced, how to smelt ores, how to find ores, and how to find the materials to make your first smelter. I hope you all enjoyed this tutorial video, and let's get started. So to get started with the smelting update, you're going to have a shovel, and you're going to have to interact with part of the environment. Now, the environment that you have to interact with is a river, specifically a river bed of rocks, right, as you see here. When you see the dig riverbed prompt, that means that you found the correct location. Now, you will not always get clay per cycle of animation, but rather a random chance of clay with another assortment of items. If you are digging on a riverbed and find that the riverbed isn't producing anything more, then you have depleted that riverbed and need to find a new place to dig, such as this, right here. So you can dig here and get a thing. This is how you find clay, which is the beginning portion of the entire smelting mod. Alright, now we're going to learn how to take the clay you found on the riverbed and make a basic smelter from the clay. What you'll need is 20 clay and 5 sticks. So, clay looks like this. You find it in the riverbeds. And then you take the 5 sticks and you just combine them. It will give you the option to shape the crude smelter. Now, once you have the crude smelter shaped, it will look like this. Alright, now you can place the smelter if you want, where you want it to place. Next up, we'll be covering how to actually fuel this smelter. It requires coal. Now, we need to go and find coal out in the world, which is a form of ore that we have currently in the world. So, let's cover that next. Now we'll be covering how to mine coal and other ores from the environment of the world. First, you need to find a pickaxe. These can be found in various places, industrial, train carts, and everything else. Then you find a stone that prompts the mine stone option. Now, you can mine from the stone thing, and it damages the pickaxe over time, so please be aware that your pickaxe can be damaged eventually and break. You use a sharpening stone to repair your pickaxe. Now, it's a random chance of getting a ore, so it can be any of the ores that are listed, which are coal, iron, lead, zinc, and copper. Alright, now once you find coal ore, which looks like this, has a little fun description, the texture really sucks, I know, you can then use your pickaxe to extract the coal from the coal ore, or if you want to, you can use a mortar stool and pedestal for an increase in how much it outputs. Mortar stool and pedestal increases it by the output by 1, and it has a lot more uses where the pickaxe does not. Once you have coal, you take 10 coal plus another 10 coal to craft a coal pile. These coal piles are used in the furnaces as a form of fuel. They are important to use. If you make a coal pile and you use the coal pile and you want to refresh your coal pile or add back to it, all you have to do is add coal to the stack. Obviously, if you have 100% remaining, please do not add coal to the stack, as it would be a waste. Alright folks, let's head back to the smelter and see what tools we need to ignite it. Now we're back at the smelter. When you have your smelter and a pile of coal, the pile of coal goes into the coal slot. When you attach coal, it sets the temperature at 1. This disables the ability to pick up your furnace or for it to be moved. So the only way to actually move the furnace is with a sledgehammer, and that is destroying the furnace in the process. So, to ignite the furnace, you need to take a blowtorch. And yes, it needs to be turned on. Once it's turned on, you can ignite the furnace. After a short animation, you will be able to see that the furnace is ignited. and that there are a flame and a smoke coming out the top. So you can see the flame down below and the pile of coal. Switch this off because it's annoying. And then you can see the smoke. The smoke goes for quite a ways and can be seen from many kilometers away. The reason for this is because we wanted people to understand that using a smelter definitely has its risks. Now that the smelter is ready, we're ready to smelt some ore. Let's get started. Alright, now let's talk about how to craft a basic clay crucible and how to fill up the metal crucibles and the clay crucibles that you find around the world. Obviously the clay one is crafted and the metal one spawns in the economy. So, you need to craft crushed bones first. To do that, you need 10 bones, a hammer, a mortar tool, a pestle, and then it creates crushed bones. You then take a certain amount of crushed bones plus so much clay equals a unfired soft crucible. This unfired soft crucible has to be fired inside the smelter for it to cure properly and be used as a crucible for holding ores, tips, or casings. Here we have the clay crucible and the metal crucible. Again, the metal crucible spawns in the economy where the clay crucible is craftable. The clay crucible only can hold half of what the metal crucible can hold as well. So, then you take your ore and then you combine it with the crucible to create a crucible filled with ore. To fill a crucible completely, you may have to combine ore, casings, or tips multiple times to fill up the crucible. Mind you, that this is dependent on each different type of ore, tips, and casings. Once you have done that, you are ready to take your ore-filled or tips or casings-filled crucible and put inside the smelter to get a molten metal version of that metal or ore later. Next, we will cover how to use molten versions of metal. Alright, now that we put a metal crucible into our smelter, it locked and it took some time to melt the metal down. I decided to melt down some lead ore today to show you how to make tips, as the only thing that you can make with the molten metals in this mod right now is tips or casings. So let's see. So as we get close to the thing, you will see that there is a crucible with molten lead and that it is 500 Celsius and it says molten metal for the liquid. Now I can't put this in my hands, and that's because it's too hot to hold. If I put gloves on, I'm able to put the molten metal in my hands. It is to be noted that this molten metal does lose temperature once outside of the furnace, and as it loses temperature, you have to use it before it reaches below a certain temperature. Otherwise, you cannot use it to cast your tips. To reheat your metal, all you have to do is go back to your smelter and put it back into the input slot. This will then start re-adding the temperature as you see here. It's important to note that the smelter, when near it, is very hot and it will burn you, so try to stay away from it as much as possible. Also, if you put the metal crucible inside your inventory, it will incredibly overheat you. So that is something to definitely be aware of. Alright folks, and then as you can see here, we can craft our metal tips with our molds. We're going to go over how to use molds next. Now we'll be covering how to make your molds, or how to find them. To make your molds, you're going to have to find clay. And then you're going to have to take either tips or casings and combine it with the clay to get a rifle tips mold or to get a casings mold. To get pistol casings, you just use pistol casings or pistol tips to make the molds. Once you have made the molds, it makes a generic rifle casing mold and a rifle tips mold. Then you can take your molten lead or brass and combine it with any of these molds, and it will give you an option to cycle through the recipes. Once you find the recipe you want to do, you just click and hold the thing to craft the casings or tips that you so wish. Mind you that the clay molds will break a lot quicker than the metal molds to my right, but these are quick and handy ways of doing it. When creating these molds, it will use 1 to 2 of the casings or tips, so please be aware of that. When you are done using these clay molds, or they break, they're done. They only produce half stacks of casings or tips, where the metal ones produce full stacks. These metal ones can be found around the economy and around in the world, in houses, residential, stuff like that. Part of all the other items that spawn. The reason for this is because these are supposed to be rare and hard to find, because they have a lot more health and a lot more use, and are slightly more efficient than the other clay molds that you can make. You do not need to combine these with tips or casings to make them. You just need to find them in the world and use them. And that, folks, is the molds that you can find in the smelting update. Alright folks, moving on to our next feature of the smelting update is the ability to make gunpowder from scratch. So you're going to need 1 piece of firewood, a splitting axe to make a pile of split wood. Once you have 10 of these, you can put it inside of a simple smelter to make charcoal. You can take charcoal or sulfur and you can crush them with either a hammer or a mortar and pestle, which is far more efficient than the hammer, to create either charcoal powder or sulfur powder. Then you take 2 full stacks of the sulfur powder and charcoal powder and combine them together to make a sulfur and charcoal powder mixture. You then take the sulfur and charcoal powder mixture and combine it with a mystery ingredient that you can find out in the world to create gunpowder. And that, folks, is how you make gunpowder from scratch. Alright, now let's say that you're done using your smelter and you want to save your pile of coal for the next use. If you go to your coal, you can see that you cannot remove it. That is because that the furnace is on currently. To extinguish your furnace, you need to find a fire extinguisher or to extinguish it by other means. If the smelter has any items still inside of it, you have to remove the items from the smelter, otherwise the recipe will not be triggered. Once you have done that, you just combine the extinguisher with the smelter to extinguish the flame and stop the smoke from being produced out the top. And voila! See the smoke going down, and the smelter will start to lose temperature. It is now you can remove your coal and go about your day, either replenishing your coal or just logging off for the night. That concludes the ability to extinguish the smelter. Alright folks, that includes the smelting tutorial for New Dawn. Coming soon, we will be having more ways of using the other molten metals, like casting out iron ingots, bars, nuggets, to being able to make your own nails, anvils, and many other tools, as well as possible weapons in the future. Thank you very much for watching our tutorial, and I hope you enjoyed it.